thank you so much for being here. And I am so excited that you're joining me for this masterclass. And if you're here because, in addition to executive presence, if you are here because you feel stuck in your career, if you are looking to move into a leadership or an executive role, but you just don't even know where to begin, and if you're here because you are confident in the knowledge you have, in what you specialize in, but you might feel a little bit of an imposter syndrome going on when it comes to thinking about moving to that next level, right? And if you're here because you want to get promoted in order to make a greater impact and to make more money, then you're in the right place. We will be covering all of that today. And yes, I did say it, make more money. Um, I think as a society, we are expected as women to really want success and go after success, but then we are shamed for wanting money, for wanting influence. And that's something that I work a lot with my clients on in terms of mindset, because that's part of that confidence, right? Of owning it and really not feeling like I have to conform or I have to be ashamed because I want something. And the way I see it is that money is a vehicle for us. Similar to how a car gets you towards a destination, money does the same. For example, this is something that enables me to take my kids to go see the pyramids in Egypt so that they can live the things that they see in their school books. This is something that enables me to have a nonprofit and run spay neuter missions for over 200 dogs and cats in the Philippines. We're also going to be stopping by and spending some time in Kenya in order to sponsor a couple of women to become certified as Montessori teachers for a nomadic Montessori school over there. So money can do a lot of great things in this world, and so there is no reason that we shouldn't want it. Going to put that out there because I think that's going to be really important in terms of you just feeling that confidence and owning it. So no judgment. This is a no judgment zone here today. So whatever you put in the chat, we are here to support you. So I want to tell you a story about a time when I had first moved into my first executive role. And I remember when it was time for bonus and compensation season, I was sitting in my manager's office, kind of all nerves and a little, kind of shaky and wondering, okay, what am I going to get this year, right? As the time always comes. And my manager slid my compensation paper across his desk to me. When I picked it up and I glanced at it, I I thought like, oh my God, wow, holy crap. My heart just stopped because I saw some numbers that were tens of thousands more than anything that I'd gotten before as a bonus. And since then, over the years, because that was a decade ago, I had gotten hundreds of thousands more than I had in bonuses in the past. And that's why it's so important, I think, for us to be able to really take ourselves to that next level, right? And I don't say this to brag. I say this because I want you to know how liberating it was for me to experience this. That moment just like crushed all these limiting beliefs I had about myself, my career, and where I could go. It I think it's such an important thing for us to have female role models in the higher levels in the corporate world and even in the entrepreneurial space, because when we have that, it shows everyone else, yes, that's possible. In fact, the reason why I'm here today and why I'm sharing all this information is because I have twin 6-year-old daughters. And I feel very strongly about having women in the leadership pipeline to fill the seats as they become available. Um, because all of you here and all of the women that I'll be supporting over the years, I see them as the people who will be the mentors and role models for my daughters when they grow up. And so the more we have in those roles, I think it's just the better for everybody. And the other thing that is important to think about is that when we want to move into those roles, it requires a lot more than just being really good at your job. Where I've been in my role. I've been at the seat, I've had a seat at the table where these big decisions were made, where promotions were being decided. And unfortunately, I saw far too often over the years that these brilliant women were put up for promotion and being reviewed by the committee. But what happened was they ended up not getting the promotion because they didn't have this X factor, this presence. And a lot of times people think that presence is something that you're just born with, but it's not. It's something that you can learn. This is really important in that it's not about being fake, right? So there, a lot of times people say, fake it till you make it. I kind of disagree with that because if you fake it, you will constantly feel the sense of imposter syndrome, and people will be able to tell and get that energy from you. So, what's really important instead, and what we'll talk about today, is how to also shift your mindset in order to believe in yourself and then package up what makes you uniquely you to create this executive brand. So, we're going to go even further beyond this concept of executive presence today. We'll talk about having and cultivating an executive brand so that when you are put up for promotion or when you're even being considered, when they're thinking of who to pull for a high profile project, people will think of you. And a good example of this is when I was in a role in a company that had over 200,000 people in it worldwide, 200,000 people worldwide. I was on a high profile project and I was presenting the updates about my project to the COO of this organization. And it's a really large organization. So that was a really big deal. And literally from the three meetings that I had with her to present the updates of this project, plus the reputation that I had, this executive brand that I had from what she heard from other people, right? Just that alone resulted in her asking my manager if I wanted to take on a new role to build out a team for her that she needed to put in place. And I was really flattered by that, and just surprised, honestly, because she didn't really know me that well. In fact, we only connected with each other three times in those meetings. But how I portrayed myself in the meetings and the confidence that I was able to show, plus the other parts of my brand, it really goes to show how powerful it is to be able to get those opportunities and have the doors open for you. And And I really want to emphasize too, like you might hear this story and you think, oh goodness, this is not me. I can't do this, right? I can't even talk to like a room of five people. How am I going to do that? But it's possible. Let me bring you all the way back to when I was in my mid-20s. And I was a consultant sitting in this tiny little office, looking across the desk at a potential client. The partner that day thought it was a great idea to bring me along to talk to the client about all the projects that I had worked on in order to convince the client to hire us for our services. So I kind of sat there, kind of going back and forth. My butt was hurting on the seat because I was so nervous. And at one point, the partner stopped, looked at me, and said, Hazel, why don't you tell Mr. Phillips about the projects you've been working on? I just looked at him. I looked at the client. I looked at him again, and I tried to open my mouth to talk, but nothing came out, like nothing. And I was absolutely mortified. Okay, so I tried again, opened my mouth. At least some sound came out this time. But what came out was a squeak and a cracked voice. Right? I was like, oh, I've actually implemented enterprise data platforms at other clients. And I really pushed through to try to get that, that story across. I got through, but we didn't get the deal, unfortunately. So when I left that building that day, my head hung low and I dragged my feet because I couldn't believe it. I felt like such a failure. All the accolades that I had from school, all the, kudos that I got in terms of the work that I've done, it really didn't mean anything because at the end of the day, I wasn't able to help us get this business. And as I move up in my career, that's going to be my whole job in consulting. All you're doing is you're pitching and trying to get business for the company. And as I stood there, so I was in New York City at the time, so I was just stood there at the top of the stairs of the subway. I gripped the cold silver hand, the cold metal hand railing of the subway stairs, and I stopped and I thought, no, this is not going to be the end of my career. This is not how my story goes. So instead of going down the stairs and returning back home, I turned left and I walked to the nearest Barnes and Noble. Back when we did have Barnes and Noble on every other block, and I went straight and I beelined it straight to the back of the store. And I pulled out a book on public speaking. I pulled out a book on communications, pulled out a book on leadership, and I started to flip through them. And as I flipped through them, I had this glimmer of hope. Like I think I could do this. So this book or these books turned into like a big stack of books that I brought home that day. Those stacks of books turned into many late nights of studying, and it also turned into many hours of working with coaches. And I was able to figure out how to work on my communication skills in order to be engaging and charismatic and be able to influence others. And I say this to you because I want to share the fact that even though I wasn't able to do it at first, I was able to overcome it and learn it, which then led to me opening up so many doors in terms of my career and moving into executive roles. And in fact, I even did a TEDx talk in front of a sea of people about a year and change ago, a year and a half ago. And the coolest thing was while I was there talking to these people, it hit me. Like I wasn't that shy computer programmer anymore. I was this confident person who really felt like I understood myself and that I could attribute all of this to me understanding and learning about myself through the journey. And so that's part of what we're going to talk about today, this journey. Um, and really a lot of it is to think about how executive presence in this brand is how people perceive you. And that's going to be really important, right? When we think about it, it's not so much this amorphous thing. It's you could just define it as how people perceive me. That's the presence that I have. So I'm going to share a screen here and show you a slide to really frame up where you are in your journey. You have connection and communication on the y-axis. You've got strategic knowledge and critical thinking on the x-axis. And the lower left quadrant, I would call the stuck contributor. So this is where you're at and you're trying to really do your best. You make sure that everything's delivered on time and you're really valued for the work that you do, but you're also just stuck in your career because you don't necessarily have the communication skills, nor do you have that executive level strategic thinking under your toolkit. After that, you have on the lower right quadrant, the hidden genius. So the hidden genius is someone who, yes, they are now able to think critically and strategically, but they're not able to communicate it. And again, going back to how executive presence is about how people perceive you. It doesn't matter how much you know if no one knows what you know or what benefit it's going to bring. And it's going to be so important to take that and really show the world this is me, this is what I'm capable of. But you also have some people who are what I call the charismatic lightweight, right? Where they may know a lot about a particular specialty, but not understand or think through the strategic and critical thinking. But they're also very good at the communication skills. They're great. They'll go pretty far along. However, in that sense, you're going to start to notice that you hit a ceiling. That the ability to communicate and connect can only get me so far without the underlying substance behind it. And where we really all want to get to is what's called what I call the iconic leader, right? This is where we want to end up, where you have both the strong ability to connect and to communicate, but also have the strategic thinking and critical thinking to back that up. And when we think about this this matrix, I'm curious here where everybody feels that they are at in their career. Hidden genius, stuck. Yeah. The good thing about being in the stuck quadrant is you've got so much potential to move into, and so much to really learn. And I think that's it. It may feel stuck now, but again, it's all about breaking it down step by step, right? And not trying to take it all in one shot. Yeah, somewhere between stuck and hidden, and then hidden genius. Great. So we have a lot of hidden geniuses in here. I feel you. Again, when you think computer programmer, they're the people that you stick in a room and close the door because you don't want them to talk to anybody. That was me, and it took some work for me to be able to figure out how do I communicate and connect with people. But it is totally possible. So I'll switch over to the next slide here, which is about the the judge. So when we have when we talk about confidence in ourselves, there's this concept called saboteurs, and it was introduced by Shirzad Shamin. And there are 10 saboteurs in total. The biggest saboteur that everybody has is the judge. And then there are nine accomplice saboteurs. And each one of us has a unique combination of saboteurs that we work through in that really hold us back. And the judge has three components to it. There's the judge of self, there's the judge of others, and then there's the judge of situation. Let me talk to you a little bit about that. I'm stop share here while we talk through. And okay, there we go. So the judge of self, this is really linked to imposter syndrome. This is where we think about, I'm not good enough, I can't do this. And maybe you don't go so far as thinking that. But let me tell you something that probably has happened to you at least sometime in your past. When we apply to jobs, women are statistically known to only apply to jobs when they have 100% of the credentials and requirements, versus men will apply to jobs when they only have 60% of the required qualifications. And that's huge. That is your judge of self talking, telling you not to apply because you don't hit the mark. And let me tell you, when being on the hiring side and working with a lot of other managers who hire, what happens is people who put together job descriptions are putting together the perfect person that doesn't exist. They know it too. They put every single requirement that, that every single thing that they would like to have as a qualification. And the reason why they do this is they figure, okay, you might get somebody who doesn't have these three, but they have these five, and everything else is good, and we'll want to hire them, right? But you don't know which three or five that you're going to get, so you just put it all in. I try to put it in a required versus a preferred section, but not all managers do that. And so I want you to go in when you apply to jobs to be thinking about that in the back of your mind. That as long as you hit 60%, you're going to be a strong candidate. And just get the applications in. And if they bring you in for an interview, that's it. You already know you passed that first mark of having the qualifications needed or the amount of qualifications needed. And after that, it's about you telling your story. I also had this experience myself when I was uh, moving into looking for another role, and someone who I had worked with in the past contacted me and had reached out. And I thought, oh, he probably is looking for to move roles. Let me think about who I know in my Rolodex to connect him with. And funny thing was, on the call, he said, actually, Hazel, I'm building out a team, and I think you'd be the perfect person for this role. He told me that the role has a lot of requirements that match my background, but there was this whole section of data governance that he knew I didn't have experience in, but he was confident that I'd be able to pick it up quickly and be able to run with it. And also I would have a team who would be able to support me in the different aspects of that. And it's really interesting because that really hit me home, like hit home hard because I thought, whoa, I might not have applied to this role if I saw the job description before talking to him because I didn't have all that data governance experience. And yet here was this guy who worked with me in the past. He had the confidence that I could do this, right? Given I had over 60% or 60% of the other required components, and he knew what I was capable of and that I was capable of growth. So I want to make sure that you're thinking that way for yourself. Maybe you could play the role of this person in your mind. You can hold the two hats and tell yourself like, hey, but you can grow into this, and that's going to be really important. Right? Then we'll move into the judge of others. So the judge of others is when we judge other people and what they're doing, and this will then really impact our ability to connect with them. There's a story I had seen posted about someone who mentioned they went, they were on the subway again, but they were on the subway and there were these kids like making a lot of ruckus, making a lot of noise. And they couldn't believe like, oh my gosh, why doesn't that dad just control the kids and, get them to sit down and be quiet? And at some point, the dad turned over to this person and said, hey, thanks so much for your patience. The kids are just really just have so much going on right now. We just came from their mother's funeral, right? And wow, first, if you didn't know that story, you'd be judging this person and thinking all these critical thoughts. But when you think about what this person is actually going through behind the scenes, it shifts what you're thinking, right? That person who cuts you off on the road when you're driving, yes, maybe they're a butthead. But you can also think about like, wow, maybe they're in a rush to get to somewhere because someone, their family member is in the hospital. Who knows? You never know. And well, that's part of that communication we'll talk about in a bit, but go in with curiosity. And even if it helps you to think about and make up a story of why someone might be doing something, and it helps you to not be critical of them, I invite you to try that. And you'll see it'll really change the interactions you'll have with people, especially at work, because your natural body language and how you interact with them will shift without you even being conscious of it. So my favorite part is this judge of the situation. I use this all the time. Like I'm aware of this all the time, and it helps because when you're aware of it, that's when you can counter it. There's always going to be times in life where you think, "Oh my gosh, this is horrible, horrible, horrible situation," or "This horrible thing happened." But a lot of times you can think about, "Okay, let me stop and think maybe it's not bad. Who knows?" And a good way to explain this is an old Taoist fable. There was this Chinese farmer and he had a son and this beautiful horse. But one day, the beautiful horse ran off and jumped over the fence and ran away. And this farmer's neighbors came over and told him, oh, they lamented, oh, how horrible, so bad, you lost your horse, what bad fortune. And the farmer said, maybe so, maybe not. They thought he was really weird, moved on to the next day. The horse came back. And this time, the horse had befriended a wild group of horses and brought them back with him. And so this farmer's neighbors came back to him and said, oh, what great fortune you have. You have this beautiful horse, and he brought all these other beautiful horses back with him. And the farmer said, maybe so, maybe not. Then, as they were trying to train the horses, his son ended up breaking his leg trying to ride one of them. And the neighbors came back and said, oh, such bad fortune. Your son broke his leg. Well, what horrible thing to happen. And the farmer said, maybe so, maybe not. And I won't drag this on for too long, but like the final thing is that there ended up becoming a war. There ended up having a war. And the soldiers from the army came to the town and said, everybody who has a son, the son must come to the army in order to fight. But his son didn't have to fight because he had a broken leg. So then the it goes back to show that you never know what a situation will bring, right? Maybe it's good, maybe it's bad, but you really never know until everything plays out. And I use that in the moment of situations because something that is really helpful, and definitely jot this down because this is super important. This is really going to change so many things for you. A way to counter this judge of situations is every time something that seems bad happens, make yourself come up with three opportunities that comes out of it. That three opportunities that this negative situation creates. And by doing that, it reframes it. In fact, you'll shift how you think about it. You'll get more creative, and it will open those opportunities and open doors and turn anything that may seem bad into actually something that's good. I invite you to do that, and just kind of keep that tucked away in the back of your mind. So the other thing that I want to share here, let me screen share again, is the other aspect that we talked about, right? So we talked about your mindset and really owning and having that inner confidence in order to have executive presence. Another aspect of it is this connection and communication. And the whole goal of communicating is not to sound smart, but the whole goal of communicating is to connect. This is really important because there are things that I had learned even in conscious parenting that I have applied to work. Earlier in my career, when I was a consultant, I had a partner of the firm, and I was his right hand person. He came to me one day and he said, Hazel, I just have some things to share, but I don't want you to solve it. I just need you to listen. And that was really eye-opening for me because as a management consultant, your brain 24/7 is trying to solve problems. And so whenever someone gives me a problem, I'm immediately trying to solve it. And instead, he told me he just needed someone to be there to listen and have an ear. And that's so important that there's going to be situations that we face at work or with friends or at home where what all they need is for us to listen and validate what they're feeling. Because if someone is feeling stressed out or frustrated, and maybe to you the problem doesn't seem so bad, right? You think, oh, why? Like just get over it. It's not a big deal. That is not going to connect with them. In fact, you're breaking the connection with them. And instead, what you want to do is you want to validate, yes, that is frustrating, right? Because what they're feeling is real, because they're feeling it. And if you validate that feeling, then you work with them to think about how they can address it after they've gotten they felt seen and heard. Then that's when you can move forward. And I've used this, even though it's from conscious parenting, I've used this so many times in my career. In fact, I talked about it in my TEDx talk as well, where a lot of times there's moments where I have to bring together different teams. So as you move up in your career, you go from smaller sphere of influence to wider spheres of influence. And ultimately, your job is to communicate because your job is to align different teams together to go after the same goal. And there are many times, unfortunately, when these different departments are really butting heads. So the way that I would go through that and help them align is meet with each department and I understand like what are your motivation, like without saying I'm trying to understand their motivations, but I am trying to understand their motivations. I'm also validating the frustration they're feeling about the moment. And then once I do that, then I'm able to, they're starting to clear their mind and they're going to be more open to receive the information you have to share as to the benefits that they can get from from aligning and partnering. And that has been tremendous in terms of me moving up in my career. In fact, in my current role, I had worked with this manager before, a different manager, but he told me that the reason why he wanted to hire me was because of the relationships I'm able to create and the connections I can create. The other thing when we talk about connecting to communicate is body language. So that's really important. When we are talking to people, there's the body language that we have that we're giving off, right? We might not realize it, but we could be sending signals that we're nervous or that we are not interested. And or that we're not sure of ourselves. And that's the huge one, right? That sending the signal of not being confident, given we're talking about executive presence. So I see a lot of times that people are in a meeting or in a Zoom call, and they're just because it's comfortable, maybe they put their hands together and they're sitting kind of like this, or their heads kind of down, and that doesn't really show you to give off the feeling that I'm confident in myself. So an easy thing that I tell people is when I work with my clients, we look at how they are appearing in the Zoom call, and I say, just sit up. Imagine a string. This is actually something they teach in ballet, and ballerinas have the most beautiful postures, right? So posture is the biggest thing for body language for presence. Imagine a string just coming up above your head, because what happens is if you just think, oh, I have to pull my shoulders back, there's a lot of tension right here. But if you just imagine that string pulling you up, it elongates you. And it's not about pulling the shoulders back necessarily, it's about elongating yourself. And then it also will naturally open up your chest. And what you could do is you could take your two hands and put it on both sides of the keyboard, and that's going to open up your chest further. And that's going to show a lot of the confidence and that presence as you are in a meeting or delivering a presentation. So it's super simple thing to do. And definitely like things I mentioned, like things if you touch your face a lot, it may come across as you being nervous, right? Another thing that I talk about with my clients is that we talk about not just the posture and the body language you're conveying, but we also talk about how to read other people's body language in order to understand how to navigate the conversation and how to. So a lot of times we have to get buy-in, right? Oh, where's their mind at, right? What do they seem to have more objections? They're not just not sharing, or are they kind of on the side of getting won over already? Which direction should I go? And so when we even something like talking about touching your face, yes, if you touch your face, you're giving off the sense that you're nervous. But when you see someone else touching your face, maybe something's bothering them. Maybe they're nervous about something. So use that as an opportunity to call it out. Not calling out touching the face, but asking, hey, is there something that you're uncomfortable with the proposal here? And that way you can address the objection. If you don't surface an objection when you're trying to get buy-in, that's not a good thing, because you're not just skirting it and throwing it on the rug. All it means is the person's not telling you he's going to or disagree, and then he's going to disagree at the end or when you circle back with him, and you just lost your shot to get that buy-in. So that's why it's really important when you're thinking about this communication piece, thinking of it as, how do I connect with people? And another piece with connection, this is such a rich area, is there's this concept in neurolinguistic programming, where you have this concept of match and mirror. And what match and mirror does is it is about connecting first with the person where they're at in the moment. And then you can lead. So what does that mean? If I meet up with somebody and the person is, a little bit slower in how they talk, not it's just their style, or they're kind of bummed out today, maybe, or whatever it be, their style is just a little lower voice, a little slower. If I walk up to them and say, "Hi, how are you? How are you really excited to start this project today?" Oh my goodness, they're just gonna be like, "Please get away. I don't want to deal with you today." Um, and so you have to be thoughtful and observant of where the person's starting at, and then match where they are first. So I'll start with, "Oh, hey, so nice to see you today." So I'm using a lower voice, I'm using a slower tempo when I speak. And that way we connect first. We lock places and connect with the matching. Then once we've connected, I can then lead them from that point. So then I can start speaking a little faster, being a little bit more excited. And then they're going to come with me into that energy level. Right? I guess because I studied neurolinguistic programming and did a whole master practitioner on it, it's become second nature to me. And So a lot of times when I am walking with people like coworkers or friends, either on the street or in the office, we'll be talking and walking in a certain direction. And at some point I'll stop and say, hey, where are we going? Right? Which way are we supposed to be turning? And the person will turn to me and say, I was following you. So it's like this maybe naturally matching and leading, but
Hey,
not when I
Mary.
wanted to. Um, so, but it really just shows how subconscious it is and how powerful it is. And certainly we don't want to use any of these tools for
That's
bad.
nice in here.
This is all about using this for good. But it's if you think about it, if your goal is to connect and put the person at ease, that's a good thing, right? There's no maliciousness in that. Because when they're at ease, then they're going to be able to also show up their best in that interaction. So that's the key thing. I just want to, I'm curious, throw in the chat any little aha things that you learned, especially in this communicating to connect component. It's certainly a big part of presence, right? And again, linking it back to it's how people perceive you and how you make others feel. It's all about me showing the world who I am. It's how do I make others feel when they're interacting with me? Question from Kylie. How to suss out someone else's energy if you're communicating first? Okay, so what you could do is you could start off at like a medium level energy for the first sentence or two. Then they're going to respond. But also when, we don't have time today, but I go into a lot about how to read body language. So you can kind of tell what energy level they're at based on the body language they're giving, like where their feet are at, how their posture is. But if you can't tell that, a good place to start is just start neutral, and then as they interact with you, then you notch it and then you move forward. I've even done this thing that's worked really well in interviews where I'll start, and maybe not so much with Zoom, but back in the day when it was all in person, I'll start sitting back a little bit because they're sitting back. And then as I start talking and I get excited about what I'm sharing in my experience, I start to lean forward on the desk, and they get this energy. And then I see the person start leaning forward. I'm like, yes, got it. So a little bit, another trick there. A lot of things about how to look for a job and interview. And so yeah, it's really great to reinforce the importance of leading with connection. Yeah, that you can't lead anyone if they don't feel connected to you. Think about all the people who've inspired you to go do something with them and to kind of support them in their goal, right? You don't do that if you don't feel a connection with the person, no matter how amazing they are. So that's really important. That's going to be a key for inspiring people. When you think leader versus just a manager, it's really the inspiring piece that brings it to that next level. Okay, great. So feel free throw in the chat if you have more questions that come, and I'll come back to it. And doing a quick time check here. So we talked about that communicating to connect. I'm going to share screen again to the next piece, which is really important. When we think about presence and your executive brand, because we're thinking bigger, right? We're being taking presence to the next level and thinking about our brand. It's really important to be self-aware. All the great leaders, if you study them, they are self-aware. That is what sets them apart. That's like the starting point of what makes them great. And part of self-awareness is understanding what is your natural leadership style. You're like, what's a natural leadership style? How do I figure this out? How to figure this out that I've learned through trial and error over the years is your natural leadership style is a combination of your strengths and of your values. And then you add into the little mix what we talked about, your unique combination of saboteurs as well. And that whole thing is how you operate, right? And when we talk about strengths, there are studies that show that people who operate in their strengths are 3 times more likely to report an excellent quality of life. And they are 6 times more likely to be engaged in their jobs. So it's really a big deal in terms of well being and happiness to be operating in your area of strengths. And I think of strengths as this unique combination. Each of us have this unique combination of strengths that make us who we are. When I was in that data role that I mentioned, that I wasn't fully qualified for, but grew into, I and I guess a nice side note there is I ended up being he asked me to be his successor as he moved into another role. The when I was in that role, I would need to work with my team in order to figure out like problems in how our data was flowing across all the systems. And what I would do is what was really helpful to get everybody on the same page is when we'd go on a Zoom call, talking to different people from different systems, different teams, etc. I would start drawing. I'd pull up the Zoom whiteboard. I was notorious for that. And I'd start drawing what I was hearing everybody say. And the reason why I would draw is because we only have a finite amount of working memory. And when you're in receiving so much information and you try to remember it all in your head, it's really hard in the moment to see the connections between things. And by drawing it, I could pause, see the connection. But the other benefit that I had was it was confirming with other people, is my understanding correct? Is what I'm hearing from you and my interpretation of that correct? Because sometimes they'll say, oh, no, it's not that. You have to point it over to here. Like, okay, perfect. Right. Because you don't want to walk away with a wrong understanding. And this was extremely powerful and useful for us to knock out these data flow problems that we had. And I was trying to get my team to do this, and we would I would do it, I would role play it, or I would role model it in the calls, and then I'd ask them to do it. But they struggled so much to do this, and I couldn't figure out why because I thought this is so easy. Like I just don't get it. Why can't they just draw some stuff on a screen, right? But it turns out, as I got further into my coaching journey, I realized there's this concept of having your own signature strength. And the things that you're really strong at, you often don't even know. The crazy thing is, you don't know it because it's so easy for you. And so you think that this is easy for everybody. And then you don't think it's a strength at all. But that's why it's important to really dive deep and understand what are the things that are easy for me that seem difficult for others. You could just even go through that exercise on your own. But what I do in my program with my clients is we'll go through and actually do a strengths assessment and then look at the results and talk about how combinations of strengths help them do certain things easily. But even as a starting point, just pause and think about, what's something that everyone tells me I'm really good at, or that I keep thinking like, why can't you do it? It's so easy. Jot those down. Those start to feed into what your signature strengths are. And when you understand that, lean into it, right? I'm all about working on our weaknesses. I'm all about getting better. I'm a big proponent of continuous improvement. But if we spend all our time on our weaknesses to get it from 5% to 15%, versus if we invest quite heavily in things that are our strengths to get it from 80% to 95%, then we can use these strengths as part of our brand. This is what you're going to be known for. Because when you think about leaders, it's not a cookie cutter. There's so many different kinds of leaders out there, and they are known for different specialties, different capabilities, right? And so when you figure out, okay, this is who I am, these are my strengths, I understand how my saboteurs come into play, and then you also start thinking about your values, and you could put all that together and start figuring out, how do I naturally lead? And this is important also because it's all about how do you lead in an authentic way. When we try to be somebody we're not, because that's what we think the male dominated corporate culture is looking for, you're just going to come across inauthentic. It's going to show up as you not being confident in yourself or strong. And a good way to think about this is someone said in another class I had that it's like wearing a suit that doesn't fit. Um, when you have a suit that fits you just right, you just walk in with this confidence in yourself because you know you look good, right? But if you have this ill-fitting suit that might maybe too wide here and too tight over here, you're gonna fidget a lot because it's not gonna feel right. And that's why it's really important to spend time to understand who you are and gain that self-awareness so that you can then figure out how do I package that up. Okay. So then any questions on that before I jump to the next component of presence and executive brand? You can throw that in the chat if you want. Share. The judge is a huge example. Yes. Another example of saboteurs. So another example of saboteurs is something that I have, which is called the hyperachiever. We're not talking about high achiever. Hyperachiever is different. Because the funny thing is when, and this is where strengths come into play. Funny enough, achiever is one of my top strengths. Yes. And hyperachiever is one of my saboteurs. Saboteurs, it's two sides of a coin. A lot of times the things that make us strong are also the things that hold us back. And me being a hyperachiever means I push too hard. I beat myself up when I don't achieve something, right? And so that's an example of one saboteur. Another kind of saboteur is the avoider saboteur, where sometimes people, you wonder like, oh, why do I procrastinate all the time? I don't know why. And sometimes it could be because one of your saboteurs is the avoider saboteur. And there's a whole set of 10 of them, which is really useful to understand because when you are reflecting on what is holding me back for each one of them, you can be aware of it because awareness is the first step. I don't know who is still around when GI Joe was on TV, but GI Joe they used to say knowing is half the battle, and it's true. If you are aware of something, that is half the battle for you to be able to do something about it. Because if you don't even know it's happening, it'll just naturally take over, and you don't even realize it. Okay. Tamba, I wrote my strengths and values down. Is there anything else to write down? Help me define my lead. So one, I think the key thing is when you think about your strengths and values, now that you've written them down, you want to think about how do they connect and intersect and how do they work together. So spending some time thinking about how one will support or enhance another, and maybe how one may conflict with another. Sometimes we have strengths and values that conflict, or two values that conflict with each other, and really spending some time reflecting on that. And Yun says, I like how you combine strengths and values. Yes, I I just think that there's everybody has this natural style. My style is very much about like I'm a learner and I'm futuristic. So I think about what are the possibilities in the future. So I am big about getting energy from that and motivating people to do it. And because I'm a learner and I value continuous improvement, I'm the type of leader that my team members will stay connected with me even if after I move roles, because I care so much about their personal growth. So whenever I'm asked like what's the thing that you're most proud of that you've achieved in your career? As silly as it sounds, but it goes to show what my values are. The thing I'm most proud of in my career is when someone in my team, when I was leaving a prior role, when he stopped over and told me, "Hey, Hazel, you're the best manager I've ever had. I've never had a manager care so much about me as a person who saw me as a whole, and cared about my growth." And fast forward, even in some roles after that, I've had team members say, I didn't know what to do with it at first because it was kind of weird. You cared about my career after this job because I'm used to people only caring about how do I perform in this role. Um, but I really appreciate it, right? And these are then relationships that I maintain even as I move from one role to another. And so it's really beautiful. But that's my style, right? And other people are going to have a different kind of style. And do I provide any coaching lessons? Yeah, happy to share with you at the end how you can continue your learning journey for me with me. In fact, I found that one-on-one sessions are a bit uh, inaccessible for people, so I put together a group accelerator program with a lot of support in order to get you through all of the components and dive really deep into everything. It includes the assessment. It includes us walking through identifying all your saboteurs and making it very personalized. So it has the feeling of a one-on-one without the cost of a one-on-one. But thanks, Andrea. I'll share with that, share more information on that at the end. Okay, so I'm going to switch. Let me share the next piece because this is the other critical part. Remember, we talked about that 2x2 matrix, and everybody loves the framework. So I'm the management consultant, so I'm all about the 2x2s, right? And the next thing after being self-aware and understanding your natural leadership style and your strengths, the other piece that's important is the strategic and critical thinking. I tell you, there's nothing more that like when I meet somebody, I can know in a split second if they're a junior person because when I talk to them, they are too in the weeds. And I'm like, okay, get to it. What's the thing? What's the important thing I need to get out of this? A and B, what do you need from me? So and that B is something that so many people miss when they give presentations to senior executives. And so add that to your notes, right? Whenever I am presenting something, even presenting an update or trying to get buy-in, always be clear on your call to action. This is what I need from you. Because they're like, okay, that's nice. You're telling me this, but why are you telling me this? Oh, I'm telling you this to give you an understanding, but also because I need this kind of support. And sometimes the support might just be I need you to be able to be familiar with it so that when you go to this executive committee meeting and it comes up, that you'll be able to explain and give everybody for the status of where we're at. It could be something like that, or it could be something specific like, hey, I really need resources, or I need your input on something. So just be clear, right? Imagine someone coming to you and they're beating around the bush, like, so, there's this no, let's make it a date, right? So it's like there's this movie playing. It'd be kind of cool to see it. And she's like, come on, just ask me, right? Just ask me out on this date. How frustrating is it being on the receiving side of that? So that's something that's really important. But another thing is frameworks. So I spent over $200,000 on my MBA, and it was really useful. And we spent a lot of time learning about frameworks. But what I've found as I've interacted and talked to my fellow classmates or even people who went to other schools, but did also do their MBA, I found that a lot of people think there's this only one place where I can use these frameworks. Like when you talk about competitive strategy, oh, I'm only going to use these frameworks when I am in a role that the company, I'm trying to help the company figure out how to position itself as we enter a market. But what I found is that these frameworks are actually really useful to use for our own lives. And I actually, as I was coaching someone in conscious parenting, even I started talking to her about second order thinking, right? And some of these other frameworks that you normally wouldn't think comes into play when you're working with your kids, but kids are really smart, so you need all the tools you can get. But again, this is really important when you think of work. Bayesian theory. This is something that is really important. So jot this down as well. Bayesian theory is all about probabilities and possibilities. When I am talking to somebody, I've trained my mind to literally, it's a split second and they don't even realize I'm doing it. I just naturally do it now. But to get there, you kind of just practice with it for a while, right? And then it becomes muscle memory and ingrained. But whenever I talk to somebody, I'm always thinking, okay, what are the options that we have? And I play through, that's where second order thinking comes in. I play through each option. Where will this end up? Before I make my decision for which direction we're going to choose for step one. Because I'm like, okay, if we do this, this is going to happen. Then that team will decide to move forward with the product, and et cetera. And I might not like where that option ended up. So I backtrack, I look at the next option, follow all the way through. So that's really important. And also because when you become a leader and an executive and you're making these strategic decisions, you have to be thinking about what are the repercussions or benefits of a decision I'm making right now, even if it might seem like a small decision. And that brings us to second order thinking, what may seem like a small decision. So when we think about something, a lot of times people just immediately think of the first step, but not what could happen after, right? I was talking about that a bit. And a good example of this is, so there's this island, and the government was like racking its brain, like, what do we do about this? Like, we're overrun with these snakes that were introduced to the island, and they're not native, and they're killing all of the wildlife. Like, what can we do about it? And someone has a great idea. Oh, let's uh have the local citizens help us, right? Why don't we offer rewards? Like, offer a reward every time they bring us a snake, and then they'll be the ones to collect it for us, and we don't need to create a whole department to go around and collect that. That'll save us so much money. Great idea, kind of, maybe. Well, what ended up happening was that people said, oh, every time I bring a snake, I get money. So they started to breed the snakes so that they can have more snakes to bring in, which was not what they wanted to achieve with that decision. So it's really important. Again, second order thinking, like, if I do this, then they're going to want to do this. And then, yeah, okay, maybe that wouldn't work out so well. So just keep that in mind and jot that down too. And the other thing that I had on the screen earlier was Nash equilibrium and signaling. Sounds super fancy. But at its core, signaling is when I'll sometimes do something, even though I don't have to do it at the moment, but I'm sending a signal to the other person because it's going to affect how they respond to me and how they respond to me or interact with me in the future. Um, it's, for example, there was a senior, very, very senior woman in an organization that I was with. And we were in a Zoom call with over 40 people on the call, all equally senior people. And she was talking about something, and someone cut her off. And kind of maybe a yes in the chat if you've ever been cut off in a meeting. But someone cut her off, and she paused and she said very calmly, let me finish. And she started to continue talking. That was a signal. After that, because these were recurring meetings every week, no one ever cut her off again. In fact, one time someone did cut her off. Then he quickly realized his mistake and he apologized, like, "Oh, I'm so sorry for cutting you off. Just please continue. I'll jump in afterwards." And when we think about signaling, it also comes into play in our personal lives about boundaries. Because when you think about it, we actually train people in how to treat us. Anyone ever have that bad boyfriend who treated you like crap? Because you trained him that he could do that, right? If you don't put up with crap from day one and you hold your ground, you're signaling to him like, this doesn't work here. I'm not going to put up with it. And so you take that and you bring that back to the workplace whenever you've got workplace bullies. That's going to be really important too. So really cool ways that some of this, high level organizational frameworks really apply to our day-to-day life. And that all brings us then to the part about putting it all together. Let me share this. I talked about presence, then I talked about your executive brand. So everything we talked about is pulling together what makes you unique in order to create the brand of you. So we have these saboteurs, having our mindset in the right place, that we have this inner confidence and belief in ourselves. So I like to go beyond the word confidence. It is kind of overused. I like to use the word belief. Belief in yourself is so much deeper. And it just makes you imagine this this being feeling of being grounded, right? And when you think of people with executive presence, when they walk in a room, like, man, they feel really grounded. It's hard to describe, but you do get that sense. And that, yeah, you can kind of work around it with your body language, but at the end of the day, if you don't have that belief in yourself, it will not come through. And then we also talked about the concept of, the saboteurs as it relates to that belief in yourself and being able to counter, because you are going to question yourself. That's normal. That means you're human, right? All the greatest people, all the most confident people, they question themselves too. Don't think otherwise, but it's what you do with it. It's how you turn these situations that seem negative, instead of like, oh my God, what am I going to do? That's it, forget it, I give up. Instead of that, you stop and say, no, no. Hazel said, I need to come up with three things to turn this into an opportunity. And the reason why it's three things and not just one is it's easy to come up with one. So when you have to get to the third item, that's when you start getting creative. And when I do a lot of design thinking work, we talk about how sometimes when you get to 10, when you get to 8, 9, 10, that's when you get really creative and like the cool ideas come through. So once you have that, then it's about this understanding of yourself and your natural leadership style, your strengths, your values. We add that to the mix now for the package. And then closing it out, rounding it out with the ability to think strategically and critically. So that when you walk in a room, yeah, okay, you have the presence, you're exuding confidence in your body language and your posture and how you are talking, the way you're using your voice. But if you don't have really good things to say and you're talking about the weeds, like I said, that's the first way I can tell someone's junior, no matter how polished they are. If they're still in the weeds and not thinking strategically bigger picture, the so what? Like I'll always ask my team, so what? So when they come up with a presentation and analysis, like so what? So what's the overarching idea? What's the theme that you're trying to get across? So that's part of that storytelling piece in our messaging. So you put all that together. And what's important is it doesn't stop there. Because if you're not consciously making sure people know what you're doing, you're not going to get that executive brand. So part of the work also that I like to emphasize is don't think that this is the minor piece. Yes, this is the bow on the gift, right? But this is how you're making sure, okay, how do I market myself? I am a brand, I am a product. Think of yourself as a product. Treat yourself like a product. What are some ways we could do that? We can, when we choose a project, right? Sometimes we have a choice, sometimes we don't. It is what it is. But when we do have a choice for a project, think about, what will this project get me? Don't just say yes to every project. Prioritize the ones that you see have a greater impact. Prioritize the ones that make sure that you interact with people outside of your department. One of the things I see really holding people back in their careers is only people in their department know who they are, or in their little team, not even their department. And when I put people up for promotion at the end of the year, one of the questions comes up in, hey, who are the sponsors? And are the sponsors in different areas of different organizations in the enterprise? Because if I can't show that, I can't get them to a director SVP level in order to get promoted, because then they're not showing breadth of impact. So think about that too, right? Who am I touching in the work that I do? And when you package yourself, also think beyond your company even. So one of the people that I'm working with, we nailed down this brand of hers, but it also included her strengths in communication, connection, and change. And so we talked about how, yes, you can establish yourself as an expert in change management in your current role, in your current company, but how do you take that outside to the industry? Start attending industry conferences and then talk about the conference in LinkedIn, right? Say, I attended this conference and there's this great insight. So it shows that you're very active in whatever that specialty is that you want to position yourself in. Um, then over time, and the good thing is, if you are in a company that's a pretty well-known company, oftentimes you can try to find out who the coordinators are and find out if there is a discount for your company or and any free tickets available so that you're not paying a couple thousand every time to go to an event. So I actually get contacted by event coordinators all the time, not just the event, but also if I can speak there. So if you see maybe someone in your company speaking, oftentimes they will give the speaker a code to give to colleagues to come to attend the event for free. So you can reach out to that person in your company who's going to speak and say, "Hey, are you allowed to have people of the company join the conference? I'd love to join. Would love to hear you speak, etc." That's one way around that. And so ultimately, the idea is you're not just attending the conferences and networking and talking about all this, you also end up becoming a panelist and then a speaker. And then the world is your oyster, right? You start being able to be seen as this leader, this more senior executive as you move up in your career, and you could take that anywhere, right? Because the reputation you create in your company stays in your company. So be very thoughtful of how do I take that reputation and extend it out so that when I move jobs, I can bring it with me. Tamba, get yourself in the room. Yes, that is it. And that's the big thing, right? Get yourself in the room, and when you walk in, because you've got the belief, you understand your strengths, and you understand your value and your worth, you're going to walk in and say, "And I belong in this room." That's key. Yeah, I love it. I love it. Okay, so that really is the whole package. I'll also wrap it up and walk through a little bit more detail what we covered. And I know Andrea had asked about working with me, so just want to ask you a question. Did you get value out of what we've covered so far? And maybe drop in the chat some of the aha insights that you got, so that I know to be able to emphasize that a lot more as I give these free master classes for more people to help others just like you. And as you do that, I just want to share the reason why I do this is because I truly believe in being able to have more women in these leadership pipelines. Um, that's what prompted me to do the TEDx talk, even though I had never given a talk in a group that large before, because I found how important it is to understand our own identity and how it's important to do so for women to be in the pipeline and stay in these roles. And so it's really heartwarming to see whenever people share what helped them. So interested in the intersection of body language and communication, tips with body language, yeah, and getting out of your comfort zone, strategic thinking skills, yeah, and it's possible, right? Like everything, it's like step by step. There's ways you can break this all down and how to better communicate strategic thinking and the saboteurs. Awesome. And just want to ask, other than Andrea, just may I share with you then how to continue working with me if you want to take your learning journey further? How to market myself after this? Yes, please keep that at the top of your mind, Tom, but always be thinking about marketing self. Thank you so much. Okay, so let me share with you. I'm really excited about this because this is all about making this kind of knowledge accessible to people, to more people. So here's the thing. Companies pay, it's true. I know it's crazy, but it's true. I know people who've gone through the training and I know people who are the trainers. Companies pay $50,000 for 3 months of executive coaching. But the problem is you need to be an executive to get it. So that's kind of like the chicken and the egg, right? Where I was like, okay, how do we make this accessible to people when they're not yet an executive so that they can become an executive? And that was the challenge. So I put together a group program because the one-on-one coaching is a lot more expensive. But if you make it a group program, I think there's a lot of benefits as well where people learn from each other. And a lot of times you hear questions that someone asks that you had not thought of. But after they ask you, you're like, oh my gosh, that's a really good question. And I'm glad I heard the answer to it. So what is in this program is comprehensive modules. So the things that we talked about in terms of that building the unshakable confidence, mastering communication. Something that I didn't even touch on today was vocal musicality. How do you use your voice to be engaging? That's going to be also important. And also writing to influence that we don't have time today, but when you craft your emails, how should you be thinking about it, right, in order to influence others? And then also this concept of defining, helping you define what your natural leadership style is. But part of your natural leadership style, we also will be talking about the motivations of others. Um, I had talked once with somebody, and this person was saying, "Yeah, everybody keeps telling me I need to figure out how to get buy-in, and everyone keeps telling me just figure out the motivations of the person you're getting buy-in from." And she didn't really understand, like, what does that look like? What does that even mean? So there's things that we take for granted to just say it. So we read about it in books, we read it about in articles, people talk about it on YouTube, but it's the how that's important. So I'm very much about concrete execution. In fact, I'm known for taking the strategy of a company and executing it. So that's part of my brand. And then I take that to a personal level, and I'm all about what are specific actions we can take in order to break down that skill and develop the skill. And then thinking like a strategic leader, we talked about some of the frameworks. There are a whole lot more. There are also frameworks about prioritization, because as you move up in your career as a CEO, for example, your job is really about allocation of resources. What do I put resources towards? And how do I move my resources around the proper way to prioritize that? Right. And then also just being able to say, okay, great, I'm good at this, knowing the details, but what are things that I could do to pull myself out and think bigger picture? And then part of that is thinking about how things connect with each other. That's going to be huge. And then the final piece is we talked about this brand of you. So how do you build that executive brand? How do you market yourself? How do what is your brand story? So we'll work together, craft what is your brand story, so that when you are talking to people, that's what's in your mind, and that changes maybe the things you say or how you say certain things, like or the projects that you pick, like we talked about. And then finally, the last module is connecting all the dots to bring all this together and making sure that you start putting together habits that really stick to make this all continue to become muscle memory. And then metrics. So we talk about OKRs and how you can use that not just at a company level, but how you can use that for yourself in order to measure your progress and stay on track. Because inevitably, I've been on so many programs, like leadership programs, productivity programs, you name it. I've taken it, and the good thing is, like, while I'm in the program, I'm doing well, but then after the program's finished, it all fizzles, and then you forget about it, and you're on to the next thing. So it's all about creating that plan for yourself so that you stick to this and continue it. And the good thing is these modules are something that you have access to for life. So you can always go back and rewatch the video modules when it is done, when you're done with the program. And the other thing is I will be continually updating these video modules as things shift. Maybe there's different trends in the world. I do have some thoughts about maybe supplementing with some workshops related to AI, and also just what is useful for students as they go through the program. I'll continually update the modules, and you will have access to the most current one at all times for the rest of your life. We'll also have live interactive sessions that are really about taking what you're learning and putting it into practice. Uh, you know what it's like when you read a book. It's nice, I know the theory, but you don't understand the nuances, how hard it is, or how it feels unless you try it. And it's really important. That's why I like the group setting idea, because it creates the safe space for you to try and practice, and instead of like the first time you're trying it is in a high stakes situation at the office. It also comes with a workbook. And then I talked about the OKRs and the metrics, which will be really useful for you to stay on track and measure your progress. And it does include the Clifton Strengths Assessment, so you don't have to pay for that separately. We'll also use the results of that and really dive into some insights about what makes you unique as an executive and a leader. Okay. Then additionally, there's some bonuses right now for, because I'm trying to make this as useful as possible for people. There's one-on-one coaching. So there's 3 one-on-one coaching sessions with me, and we do dive into your saboteurs for the first one and work through what are your saboteurs. You'll also do an assessment for that, and we'll talk through it and how and what tools can you put into practice in order to counter them. There's also a second session of that related to body language. And when I've worked with my one-on-one clients, that was the one that they really felt was the biggest impact, because they said, okay, you watch these videos, they talk to you how to do body language, but I don't know what I'm doing, right? And when I'm there to observe and give very, very detailed, exact feedback, then they're like, oh, okay, now it makes sense. Okay, now I know what to adjust and what to do and how to follow it. So that's really important to be tailored. And then the final session for coaching, we're going to dive into your strengths and walk through your Clifton Strengths Assessment, help you start crafting that package of what makes you so special and unique and brilliant. And at the tail end of that, we work through what your plan is to make sure that you're on track to keep the momentum going even after the program's finished. And then also there's this, more information in terms of a strategic thinking and decision making guide, so that you can have everything easily referenceable. Like, oh, I'm trying to think through something. What framework is there that I can apply here? So that's going to be available to you. And then Leadership Connect sessions. I love this idea because when I've gone through programs in the past, you get this camaraderie during the program, but after the program's done, nobody talks to each other anymore. We didn't actually develop relationships with each other, like deep relationships. And I think these Leadership Connect sessions are really useful. You'll be paired up in twos throughout the whole program in order to how many people in those groups? So, well, I'll talk about this, but this group cohort is 15 people, and so it's nice and intimate. And then the for the cohort for the live practice sessions, and we do breakout rooms. But for the Leadership Connect sessions, these are one-on-one, and that way each week you're connecting one-on-one with another person in the cohort, but you're not just like sent to like, oh, go network, go talk to each other. You're actually going to be given very specific things to do. And there's two benefits of that. One is that you love it, Kyle, Kylie. One is that you will be able to create connections and maintain your network even after the program's done, because you got to know each other very deeply. The other benefit to this is it's more practice, right? So we talked about communicating to connect. I'll actually be giving you specific questions to ask each other that helps you dive deep quickly in an interaction. So you're practicing in a safe space where the other person knows what we're doing. You don't have to feel awkward or weird. You can feel it out in your body, how it comes out of your mouth, and then you can apply it the outside world, outside of our little bubble here. Does your connection buddy change? Yes, it changes. So the whole idea is that it's giving you the opportunity to practice with someone you don't know that well. How do you dive quickly into a conversation that is meaningful without being awkward, that you're all of a sudden asking for their life story in the first 2 minutes? So that's really important that you're changing up each week. And then at some point you might see the same person again as we go through the weeks. And then you'll be practicing something else. The So all of this together, we got the modules which you have access to for your lifetime with all the updates, the interactive sessions, the workbook, the toolkit, as well as the decision making guide, and the 3 bonuses, and the biggest piece being the individualized coaching sessions. So all that together would normally come out to over $53,000. And it's not coming out here, but there you go. But again, I wanted to make this accessible, right? I don't want it to cost like executive coaching. So the regular price of this will be $57.97. But because this is the first time I'm launching the group version of this program, I'm making it up to 70% off in order to really run it. Because what's going to be important for me is that you're part of this cohort and giving me feedback as well. I'm like, hey, I'm loving this part, or I wish I had more of this. And your input is helping me. And in exchange for that benefit, I'm also reducing the cost from the regular price. Okay. So you can go to hazelc.com/join if you are interested, but I'll also tell you a little bit more about it. I'll pop this in the chat so you can see the site that has a lot more information. So the people that I've worked with, the thing that they see is they're seeing the results, that their reputation is being built, right? That how people respond to them at work is changing. They can see like, oh, people look at me differently. People talk to me differently. And then the other piece that is, I think, really important is that I truly do care about your success. I'm not just here to coach and say, here's the tools, go have fun with it. I really want to make sure you succeed. And the reason for that is multiple reasons that I've already mentioned, but also I just get so much happiness seeing other women um, really become confident. Like I can't even describe what it's like when I see a person like from where they started to where they end up when I work with them, the transformation in them, the confidence, how their face is brighter, how they're taking up more space, literally more space in a seat or in a room at the table. And it's really beautiful. And then the other thing is that it's all about bridging the gap, right? Between knowing and implementing. Too many times, like there's so much free stuff out there, books, articles, podcasts, YouTube videos. They talk about stuff. They give you the what, but not really the how. And that's, again, that's what I am super focused on, which is how do we break it down? What are the exact actions and steps that we need to take to do that thing? There's also painful bonuses where I'm going to be giving workshops throughout the year, and two of the upcoming workshops are going to be networking for introverts, near and dear to my heart. But the good news is, I'll give you a little preview that the communicate to connect works really well for introverts because we're all about connecting deeply. And so we'll talk about how to leverage that. And then from manager to mentor. So in order to inspire your team, how do you go from like manager who's just trying to make sure everyone's doing what they're supposed to do to becoming a mentor that they look up to, right? That they're able to learn from and to be inspired by. And that mentor is like really starting to push you towards that leadership level and executive level. And then the Taylor feedback. So this other bonus is even more body language support because that was the feedback that I got from my existing clients, where not only will we have our one-on-one session, but later on we'll also do a video recording, and you could send that to me, and I will continue to further give you feedback to further refine your body language. So after you've learned and applied, later on in the program, you submit a video and we'll continue to tweak it further. So then all of that brings it up to with the three painful bonuses, it's a value of 56,000. But again, it is 1797 US dollars, and primarily because I want to make this accessible. And I am really looking forward to how to work with you to make it even better for future women to come. The other thing is, okay, you're like, okay, who is this Hazel person? Well, I am an executive at a Fortune 500 company. I've been an executive for over a decade. I have spent over $100,000 myself on courses as a student, and then near $100,000 for courses and programs to become certified as a coach across multiple modalities. I've mentioned conscious parenting, executive coaching, as well as Gallup Strengths and positive intelligence, NLP, you name it. Because my whole thing is when I was looking for a coach in earlier in my career, I wanted someone who could look at things holistically and work with me holistically. I didn't just want to work with a voice coach, and I did. I didn't want to just work with a productivity coach or a leadership coach um, or a mindset coach. And it's kind of like when you have doctors who are not talking to each other, right? You have all these specialist doctors and they don't talk to each other. It just doesn't jive very well, and it's not cohesive for you, and you don't really make the most out of the experience. So it's kind of like having all these different coaches all rolled into one experience, and I've made it integrated for you. And that was the hard part, right? Figuring out how did all these pieces work together. But if you're not sure, like, okay, who is this Hazel person? Then I am giving a 15-day risk-free guarantee. So as long as you show that that you've done the work for that 15 days, and if you feel like, this is not for me, I'm not getting the value I thought out of it, no problem. I'm good with it. I will give you your money back, fully refunded, what you paid. And I do want to share that in the first 15 days, you will have had module one, in order to really work on saboteurs and to work through your mindset, to have that deep belief in yourself for confidence. Um, it also will have covered module two at the time, which is all about the communications piece that we talked about, that really juicy stuff, body language, NLP, and also, what your body language is versus how to read other people's body language. I actually had taken a course that cost more than this, um, from an FBI agent, it just to understand how to read people's body language. So that's an example of like one little piece that was very isolated. And then also during that period, you'll get a sense of how we work together, because we'll have done one-on-one coaching together related to your saboteurs and your mindset, and really thinking about how does that unique combination, help you get clarity, and then have that confidence from within. Okay. And the reason why I'm very confident to give the 15-day guarantee is because I truly think after you get a sense of the pieces in the first two modules, that you're going to love it and really want to go the rest of the way and dive into the rest of the program, because you start to see what that transformation is starting to come in your life. And it is for 50 days, right? We're working together for 50 days. I purposely didn't make it just like a 1 week or 2 week boot camp, because it's really important to go through all the pieces and for you to practice and be able to make this muscle memory, just start to, in order to be able to achieve that transformation, which is the number one goal that I have for you. Okay. And again, if there's 15 spots available, I had mentioned earlier. If you are not able to do the pay in full, which has its bonuses, there's also the option for a flexible payment plan, so that you'll see on the website as well. And just letting you know that the program is starting next Sunday, February 16. And so registration is open only for the next 5 days. After that, it closes because we're about to start. Okay. And how often are those group sessions? So Andrew, the group sessions are, oh, no, no, sorry at all. So the group sessions run for 2 hours. They are on Sundays at this exact time. So it'll be same exact start time. It'll run for 2 hours. And we have 6 of those. For the most part, they are every week, but we don't have it on the first day, which is the 16th, because I want people to have time to go through the modules and read it and absorb it and watch the videos, so that when we do the practice session, you have all that information already and you're not trying to rush it in the night before. There's also built in a break period where we don't have a group session, group practice session. And the reason for that is my experience with other programs has been that when it's like an 8 week or 6 week program, a lot of people fall behind halfway through. And then I see the people who fall behind just kind of throw up their hands and give up because now they're completely overwhelmed. So I built in a period in the middle in order for you to catch up, or if you are already caught up, to be able to go deeper and do more. We are also using the breaks to do our one-on-one sessions too. So it's not like you're not doing anything for that week. And are they recorded? Yes. The sessions are recorded, so that if you have to miss one, then you have access to it as a replay. It'll become available in like 24 to 48 hours, the replay. And you also have access to the replay of the group sessions for life for your cohort. That way you can go back and look at, because part of it too is we have a component in there where we do Q&A, and there could be things that people are asking that you want to go back to later on. Yeah. And when we start on February 16th, what's the end date? So the last group session is going to be April 6th. So let me put in the dates of the group sessions in the chat so you have it. But it will, I believe, but then even after April 6th, we're going to do the last one-on-one session. So you have continued support even after that for that full 50 days to make sure that it really sticks, right? And let me just make sure I get all the questions. Okay, how much time outside of the session for the commitment? The video modules are purposely recorded so that they're short. Nothing kills me more than popping open a module that I want to squeeze in, but then I find out it's an hour long, and I can't squeeze that in, right? In the middle of different things that I'm doing. So the modules run for 7 to maximum 15 minutes each, so that you can like fit it in the morning, in the afternoon, maybe a quick lunch break or coffee break. Um, and then there's some exercises to do as well with the modules. And those, I would say, from watching the modules and the exercises, plus the practice sessions, right? The 2 hours of practice sessions, you're looking at around 5 to 6 hours for the whole week. Right? And that's assuming 2 hours of the practice session. So three hours about for the personal work per week. And the more you put into it, the more you practice, that you could do more than that, and that will certainly help. We do have a couple of challenges throughout the program, which are a lot of fun. And someone that I had done one of the challenges with, I won't tell you the challenge, just to surprise you, but it is related to resilience, building resilience. And she made, oh, what is it now? The count. She still gives me updates. She's made about $460 off of it. So kind of made some of our money back, but you'll find out more when we get there. Okay. So also, I want to thank you. I know we're a few minutes over now, but before you jump, I want to thank you for showing up and investing in yourself. And just to, oh, awesome. Thank you, Catherine. And just to close it out, I want to share that and remind you. So, confidence isn't something that just happens, right? So, you have to claim it. And the moment that you decide to show up and show up for yourself, everything changes. I really mean that from all of the experience that I've personally had. Um, it it opens doors and it changes everything. So thank you so much for spending your time with me today, your afternoon, your late night, early morning. So thanks, Mira. And I hope you got a lot out of this. Even if we don't work together, my goal is always that you're going to get a lot of value out of even just showing up and being part of this. Um, and that's going to be key, right? Because my big mission is to get all of you into the leadership pipelines and into the leadership roles. Okay. Thanks, everybody.